What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what the news is saying about Apple and Tesla that just came out. We have some bullish news that came out earlier in the morning, and how this may affect Tesla's share price moving forward. I'm going to break down what's happening with the technicals right now, why we're starting to show some signs of weakness, how this may dictate Tesla moving forward, and what on earth all this data is telling us as we approach tomorrow and beyond. Before I break anything down about all this information, before I talk about how this all could affect Tesla's share price and what the technicals are telling us, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 10 free stocks, and any could be a free Tesla share. The offer ends very soon, in just about 9 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Alright, so Tesla was up 1.7% for the day, got a very nice pop in the morning after some bullish news involving their Chinese sales came out, but then after that, Tesla saw a slight slowdown. So what happened was the market started pumping because of the Apple event. That was very, very interesting to watch. But then I warned you guys that there was a chance that Apple could sell off if the event news just barely met expectations. And this could have become like a buy the rumor, sell the news kind of event. So Tesla went from being almost at 220, coming all the way down to about the 214s. Then it bounced just a little bit off that support, and it closed at about 217.61, very close to where this chop zone happens to be. Overall, Tesla did sell off because of this, but Tesla gained some strength because of previous price action and because of the bullish news that came out. But the question is, what's going to happen to the markets moving forward? What's going to happen to SPY and all these different stocks? I think there's a good chance for some sideways action temporarily, but overall the trend is starting to favor the bears a bit more. And there is a good chance that especially the QQQ and the NASDAQ could see more downside over the next couple of days. There may be some other tickers such as NEO and Nvda that run differently, but that will depend on confirmation and other price action. But for the most part, the collective market looks like it may cool off a little bit more as we continue to move. Now, before I talk about more details about the technicals, let's first talk about the news that came out. I mean, some people were talking about Elon Musk and some of the things that he mentioned. He mentioned very recently that Tesla aspires to be as helpful as possible to other car companies. They made all of their patents freely available several years ago, and now they're enabling other companies to use their supercharger networks. They're also very happy to license autopilot slash FSD or other Tesla technology. So that's very, very awesome news. I mean, it just shows how open minded Elon Musk is alongside the Tesla team and how much they're willing to help this entire movement for the EV sector. It also helps bring more people to Tesla because Tesla has a very big vision and they're very committed to it. But, anyways, outside of this Elon Musk tweet, I do consider this great news, but I want to talk about something else that's very important. That's the data for tomorrow. For tomorrow specifically, we have the Economic Optimism Index report that's coming out at about 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. That's going to be very important. So expect some volatility around this time. I don't think this is going to be as significant as the PMI report because when that data came out, I mean, the market popped in the morning, got a fake pop before it started to sell off a little bit, before rebounding after the Apple event was about to start. And then for tomorrow, I mean, we have the economic optimism report. This is not too significant, but it is still going to impact the markets to some degree. This is important for the outlook of economists, everyday people, for the economy going forward. And if the outlook is not very strong, this could increase the odds of more contraction because you have to remember how consumer behavior impacts the markets. If a lot of people are expecting something in price to start going up for the future, the price will most likely start going up immediately. This is what happens because of consumer behavior and how it affects supply and demand. So, with that said, this is going to affect the psychological aspect of the markets, and the market will respond and react to some degree to this news. Not saying it's going to be as significant as the PMI that came out today, but it is going to have somewhat of an effect. Now, for tomorrow, we have many earnings coming out. We have Dave and Buster's coming out. We have Casey's and a couple of others. But what's going to be impactful, or at least what I'm going to be watching carefully, is going to be GameStop and Campbell's and also NEO. And NEO's looking very, very nice approaching its earnings. I really like its setup, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. As far as Apple goes, there was nothing too massive that came out. They announced the Vision Pro headset. It cost about $3,500 plus tax. That's pretty expensive in my opinion, but it is a very good step in the right direction. They have new products coming out, new upgrades to their Macs, and more software updates they announced. So that's very, very cool stuff. I'm very excited for their partnerships. They mentioned that one of the Disney partners is partnering with them, which is very cool. And this was all very bullish news for the longer term, as they're going to be competing more with the VR headset technology companies such as like Meta. And once again, this was bullish news, but this was a buy the rumor, sell the news event. So as the news came out, Apple was already pumping very hard as we approached the big event. This helped SPY pump, Tesla pump a little bit, and also NASDAQ and the QQQ. But then Apple got rug pulled, and a lot of sellers came in securing profits after the news came out. And then Apple dumped, causing the market to dump a bit. And that's why SPY closed red. Tesla slowed down too because of that. I'm going to break that down in just a few minutes. When it comes to Tesla, some analysts are saying that Tesla could continue to run in 2023. I think that's very possible, but you have to remember that we're not just going to run in a straight line. There are going to be some instances where Tesla slows down, such as today. I mean, Tesla broke out a bit, but then it slowed down. And there are going to be some instances where Tesla pulls back in a very healthy manner. And that's the reason why I talk about that in this channel, because no stock will go up in a straight line. It's very important to remember that. I'm not saying Tesla's going to crash to new lows or it's the end for Tesla. I'm simply stating that right now technicals are looking a little bit weaker than before. We do still have some bearish divergences that are present, and there's a good chance Tesla may cool off a bit because of it. But that does not mean Tesla has to crash very hard. It could just get a very healthy pullback. And I just want to read what the charts tell us and remain as objective and non-biased as possible. Now, I'm also very bullish long term on Tesla. As I told you guys a couple of days ago, I see Tesla breaking all time highs within a year and a half from now. I'm still very, very bullish. Now, anyways, what else is very good about Tesla is the fact that they're killing it, absolutely killing it in China right now. Now, this news came out in the morning during the pre market, and that's why Tesla got a very nice gap up and a pump. But I didn't get enough time to report this. I just briefly mentioned it before talking about the charts. The news came out that Tesla delivered over 77,000 cars in China. And once again, that was some awesome, awesome news. They were made in China, and the majority of these were for China. And this was once again very awesome because we saw a massive increase compared to the past. We saw a 142% increase compared to the previous time that this was reported. And the sales in China are just killing it right now. It's not just around the world, it's particularly in China. They're doing very well alongside BYD. Their models were up pretty big over there. But what does concern me a bit is the Model 3 listings and many others out there. So in China, although we're seeing a lot of sales for Tesla, many of the models are also killing it here in the US, like the Model 3. I'm sorry, the Model Y. The Model 3 is slowing down a bit. Could a lot of people be waiting for the new updated version? That's a possibility. But for now, time is still going on, and this is still a crucial part of the quarter, and their sales are still slowing down a bit for the Model 3. So I'm hoping that somehow either the new updated version comes out and we start to see inventory dropping, or we start to see the old inventory drop as soon as possible, because the longer it takes, that's still not very good for Tesla, and they're going to need a ton of sales to offset this for the Model 3. But besides that, everything else is doing quite fine. I mean, the Model X is okay, but the Model S and the Model Y are selling like crazy. The Y still has very low inventory levels, so that's very awesome to witness to me. And then looking at their overall inventory levels, it's still going up a bit. So it's still a little bit high. I would love to see this below the 1500 area, at least below like the 1700 area. It's currently well above 2000, so I'm hoping for more and more sales for Tesla. It's getting warmer, and we tend to see higher demand for cars during the summertime. I'm hoping that this increases. Now, to add on to this, let me just add that the price price ratio for Tesla is very high right now, meaning that Tesla has been outperforming the markets. We saw some weakness on the QQQ and the Nasdaq, yet Tesla held up very nicely. That does not mean Tesla's out of the woods just yet, though, but for now, pretty decent sign. Now, Wedbush has reiterated that they're bullish on Tesla. And finally, Tesla tends to do well for earnings. Tuesdays tend to be a little bit slower for Tesla compared to Mondays. We're only green about 51% of the time historically. And June tends to be a strong month. We're green about 78+% of the time in June. That's a very, very good sign. The second day for Tesla tends to be, not the second day, the second hour of the day, the second hour of the day tends to be stronger for Tesla. And then the fourth hour tends to be stronger as well, some of the strongest hours of the day. It tends to slow down during the last hour of the day, but besides that, historically, those are the 2 hours to be watching Tesla the most for. And we're continuing to see a lot of shorts piling in. I mean, I mentioned this yesterday. We saw over 55 million Tesla shares shorted. And as Tesla held up, we did see some short covering that caused it to hold up. But at the same time, we'll have to wait and see what the data tells us about the later short interest. Tesla has a lot of shorting going on. That's part of why Tesla was squeezing quite a bit. But the slowdowns in the markets that could come could slow Tesla down to some degree too for a very healthy pullback. Even the shorting itself could play a role. Tesla has high volume, which is a very good time for it. 150 plus million in volume is very good. Lots of buyers are stepping in, especially after what the news is telling us. And overall, the short volume relative to price is still a little bit high. So these shorts keep piling in and it's not working in their benefit. So many of them start to cover their positions much sooner. That's helping Tesla too. Now let's break down these charts. What are the charts telling us? I'm going to try to keep this part kind of brief. All right, so for SPY, if we are bullish, and I think there's a good chance of a bullish move because it held support right here, and it's going to try to get a small rebound. That's just what I'm saying. A retest of like maybe 428 is possible before it does continue to downtrend. But on the 1 hour, it's looking a little bit more bearish overall. So even if we do get a small bounce from here, it is still looking a little bit more bearish on the 1 hour time frame. On the 4 hour time frame, we're about to get a bearish crossover. We need confirmation first of the cross, but we are very close to overbought's territory. So the odds do favor the market cooling off even more later on. But we could get a short-term tiny little bounce, maybe try to break above 427.5 by the morning time, and then we start cooling off. Or it could all just happen during the pre-market because we held the 30-minute 50 EMA for now. So we're holding above this major support. There may be some buyers that step in and try to defend it just a little bit. But if we end up getting enough selling pressure, it's going to likely start to retest 426 to 425. So now what levels should you watch for? Well, if we try to pump 427.5 is going to be resistance. Break that. There's 428, 428.5, 429, followed by 430 being the major resistance. 429 to 430 is a very strong resistance, the entire zone. So those are some levels to watch for if we do try to bounce. However, if we're bearish, okay, we're going to be watching the 50 EMA, which is currently at 427. If that fails us, we're going to come all the way down to about the 426 support, followed by 425, this entire zone right here. And if that breaks, it's likely going to see a lot of downside. If it fails to hold 425, the next very important level is going to come all the way down to about the 422s. All right, so that's where our very important zone is, 425. You have to watch that very carefully. What do I think is going to happen? Well, I think that there's a chance, okay, of a small rebound in the pre-market followed by some sideways price action. The trend is looking more bearish, so we're likely going to see some sideways price action, but there is a good chance that the market's going to sell off a little bit later, maybe as soon as tomorrow or a little bit afterwards. There's no true confirmation of us like tanking very hard. I'm not saying we're going to crash or anything like that. Once again, you have to watch support carefully, but there's a good chance we may see some sideways price action, just bouncing between support and resistance, ping-ponging back and forth for some time before we finally start to see the market sell off a little bit more. And that's because we are overbought. I do believe the overall momentum is favoring the bears a little bit more. It just may take a little bit longer looking at this chart and how much SPY is trying to hold the 50. But I am leaning in the direction that over the next couple of days, we're going to eventually see SPY make its way down to 425, if not lower, if that ends up failing. I am still leaning a little bit more bearish, but I do believe there's going to be some sideways action beforehand. Now, for Tesla, it's hovering above the 50 EMA quite nicely, but first thing you can notice, there is a possible like left shoulder ahead. Maybe a right shoulder could be forming before it continues to drop. If we're bullish, you're going to be watching this resistance very close to this 217.8 to about 218 zone. That's where we have some resistance. If it breaks that, there is some potential for it to retest the 219.4 to about 220 zone. Right, we have some resistance there as well. It's very tight. If 220 breaks and it manages to hold that, it could make its way up to 222.5 to about 225. But I'm not leaning more in that direction looking at this bearish divergence that developed and looking at the fact that Tesla got a rejection off 220 and failed to really hold above that level. We need some kind of catalyst for that to happen. So far, I'm not seeing it. And the odds are starting to favor Tesla just chopping around, trading very sideways, and eventually making its way down to test the 50 on this 215 area, and maybe coming down a little lower to about this 214. I'm going to be watching those levels carefully. It has to try to hold 214. I think the odds favor it chopping around for some time before we start to see a little bit more downside. I'm saying that because on the 30-minute, we have a bearish cross. On the 4-hour, Tesla is about to get a bearish cross too. So I would watch that very carefully. If anything, I think the odds favor just lots of sideways price action, and then eventually Tesla might make its way down to about this 214 area. And then if that fails, there's 212, and then we have this imbalance down to 209 to 210. In all honesty, I think the odds favor Tesla coming down to 209 to 210 soon. It may take a couple of days, though. I don't know if it's going to happen as soon as tomorrow, but I do believe it's going to take a couple of days. I think the QQQ may sell off more, and that may cause Tesla to drop to this 209 to 210 zone, uh, possibly by Friday. We're going to have to watch 214 first to see if that holds, but the odds do favor it eventually making its way down to 209 to 210, which is where we have this imbalance zone. So I'm leaning in that direction. That's what I'm seeing for Tesla. For the QQQ, for bullish, okay, we're going to be watching 355.5 to about 356. If it manages to hold above that, we could make our way up to 357.8 to about 358. If we're bearish, we're going to be watching support at 354. The 50 EMA is at 354.6. So we have that 354 flat, followed by the 353 support. And that's major support. If the QQQ comes down below 354, we're going to be watching lots of sideways price action around this 353 to 354 zone. If 353 breaks, okay, it's going to come all the way down to 350 pretty quickly. Within a day, it's probably going to do that. And I'm leaning in the direction that we may chop around first because we could be forming like a left shoulder here ahead, and the right shoulder could take some time to form. So I'm seeing lots of choppy price action, some sideways price action first, then potentially a break to the downside into this chop zone. And then either tomorrow or maybe a little bit later, I would say by Friday, we should see the QQQ make its way down to 350 in my opinion. And I think that's going to drag Tesla down later on. It's just very hard to predict exactly when. It could take a little bit longer, seeing how we're still seeing buyers stepping in and trying to defend these positions, such as the 50 EMA. But I do believe that by Friday, we're going to see the QQQ reach 350. We're going to see Tesla come a little bit lower too because of that, closer to like the 210 area. For the HYG, it's selling off a little bit as bonds traders are once again starting to sell. We have this bearish divergence too. And I forgot to mention this in full detail. On the 30-minute time frame, the QQQ has a bearish divergence. You can see it on the 30-minute. You can see it on the hourly as well. See this clear bearish divergence on the RSI and the MACD are far higher than where they reached today, even though we made a much higher high on the price. So because we got this rejection, we need some confirmation of maybe a small bounce first before it continues to sell off. We have to establish a lower high basically. If it bounces a little bit and makes a lower high, it cannot break this high right here. It's going to likely start downtrending eventually, trade a little sideways, then eventually downtrend over the next couple of days, and once again reach my target of about 350 by Friday. Could happen very soon, but I'm just going to take my time on that just to manage risks. For NEO, however, even though the market may slow NEO down a bit, the overall setup on NEO looks nice. On the 4-hour time frame, NEO has a potential inverse head and shoulder, and it's approaching earnings, and there's an open MACD right over here, so it's looking quite nice. We also had a bullish divergence playing out in a crossover on the PPO. It's hovering around the 4-hour 50 EMA. I think it's going to likely get a retest of that around the 7.76 area. We might see NEO try to make its way up above $8 to potentially 8.24. If that breaks, we could see it get closer to the 8.5 plus area, and it has a nice setup. I mean, we're forming a clear inverse head and shoulders. We formed almost everything. We have the right shoulder completing now. It looks like it's getting ready to push to about $8 as we approach earnings. Could even break well above that. It could come all the way up to about 8.66 to like 8.8. That's a pretty big move considering it's only in the 7.6 area right now. So money could be made on that. I am leaning more in that direction. For confirmation, watch it break and hold 7.76. If that's the case, we could see it quite easily fly to the 8s or even higher than that. Now, the bearish case would be a break below 7.5. I'm not leaning in that direction. I think it could test it, but I think it's going to most likely try to make its way up to $8 and outperform the market because of earnings. On the NASDAQ, however, let me just note that the NASDAQ is once again not looking perfect right now. The reason for that is because once this loads, the NASDAQ was also forming a bearish divergence. I don't know what's going on right here. Let me reload this page. I'm sorry about that, guys. The NASDAQ was also forming what appeared to be a bearish divergence. That's because of, it was very similar to that of the QQQ. And in doing so, it's continuing to play out because the NASDAQ simultaneously got a big rejection. And this is very important because now that the NASDAQ is doing this, it's most likely going to be affecting many of these different tech stocks out there. And I consider that very important because it's going to have a big effect on Tesla. Now, when we look at the charts and when we're consistently looking at these different divergences playing out, typically the market has a tendency of being dictated by a similar algorithm. And now let's bring back this chart. I am sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Don't want to restart the video anyways. But here's what's important about it, okay? There's this bearish divergence that's forming. it has been playing out so far. We got a rejection so far, and we have a tendency of being attracted to where our 50 EMA happens to be. But before that happens, we have this like unfilled gap all the way down to about the 13,100 area. There's a good chance that if we break below 13,174, we're going to come down to fill that gap. And we have bearish momentum on the 1 hour time frame. On the 30 minutes, no difference. And this is starting to look more bearish to me. It looks like we're going to see an attempt to bounce followed by a big break to where this 50 is. And then that's eventually going to bring us down to the lower 13,000s. That's going to drag down a lot of stocks like Tesla and many others. A couple of them may outperform. I will break those down in just a minute, but overall, that's what I'm seeing. Now, for the VIX, it's trying to hold up. It's very close to support, so it might come down to where this like 14.5 to 14.4 zone is. If that happens, maybe the market bounces a little bit first, and then this thing bounces off the support zone on its falling wedge, the giant falling wedge that's been developing. And then, the market causes the VIX to push up, right? Why? Because the market may sell off a little bit. The dollar is pretty flat at 104. If the dollar keeps pushing, we could see it get closer to this imbalance. If the dollar bounces off 104 and it comes up to this imbalance level, that's going to cause the market to cool off too. For Coinbase, there's a chance it may try to bounce a bit. We do have a potential bullish cross on the 30-minute time frame, but it may have to retest this 30-minute 60 to 61 area, which is where the 250 happen to be. If it breaks below 54, there's going to be a big rug pull coming. It's going to come all the way down to about 50 because there's a bigger gap below. But for now, that's what the support that's going to be very important, 54, followed by 56. 58, and then resistance is going to be closer to 60. So it's basically in terms of twos. I'm thinking that it's going to be a small attempt to bounce followed by a rejection off the very low 60s before it continues to downtrend, and we might see it make its way all the way back down to 56. That's what I'm seeing for Coinbase. For Aapl, there's going to likely be an attempt to bounce. What I'm seeing for Aapl is it made this low right here. The RSI is not really confirming too much for now. There's going to be an attempt to bounce, though. It might retest the 50, make its way up to about 181. But if Apple rejects off this and we get more sellers starting to secure more profits, this will slow down the markets more. So Apple may help the market bounce a bit in the morning thanks to this 178 support holding. Then it may retest the 30-minute 50 EMA around the very low 180s, then reject off that and start downtrending. If that's the case, the entire market may bounce a little bit, then start downtrending afterwards. For Nvidia, it's basically getting very tight. If you look at this overall formation, it's just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. I'm anticipating that by either tomorrow or the day after, there's a high probability of a big move, at least by Friday. And I'm thinking that Nvidia is going to break in some direction. Now, I don't know what the news is going to be, but if Nvidia ends up breaking below the support zone, it's going to come all the way down to about 383. If Nvidia ends up pumping very hard and breaks above 400 and holds that, it's going to make its way all the way up to about 410 and possibly even like 420 plus, because I'm expecting a very big move. Maybe some news comes out, something is going to come, it's going to help this thing move. I'm hoping it's to the upside. There is a possibility that just outperforms the market and something happens later on. But I don't know for sure, right? I'm going to be very open-minded. There's a big move coming to Nvidia. So two stocks I'm watching in particular are going to be Nvidia and NEO. I see very, very interesting price action there. For Google, if we're bullish on Google, I'm going to be watching this 128 area, right? A retest of that. If it breaks above that, we could get closer to about 130. If we're bearish, we're going to be watching 125.84 followed by 124.72, which is very close to where this imbalance is around the 124s. I'm leaning in the direction that we have this bearish cross right here and a bearish divergence that technically developed right here. And you can see it on the bigger time frames like the hourly, and the RSI has been trending down, just a little bit. So it looks to me like Google is going to most likely make an attempt to bounce in the morning. You can see it's trying to bounce already. It's going to make an attempt to do so, and it may fail. If it establishes a lower high, there's a high probability of it coming down to this 125.84 level and maybe even the 124.72 as the market slows down a bit. So I am seeing lots of sideways price action in the markets and potentially more downside later on. 10-year treasury yield is starting to trend upwards. If you look at like the 1 hour time frame, it's continuing to do this. If it continues to trend up, that tends to be a slowdown for the markets. It's starting to work like normal. It wasn't doing this for a while, and there's a potential inverse head and shoulders forming. If it does pump really hard, that could slow down the markets later on. For Amazon, if we're bullish on Amazon, it's going to make its way up to 126 plus, break and hold the high of 126.39. We could see Amazon retest 128. If Amazon fails to do so and it comes down and we end up seeing it failing to break out, it could come down to retest 123.5. I'm leaning the direction of it coming down to retest this 123.5 area. But first, I may make a small push to the upside with the market in the very beginning, getting closer to like 126, then selling off to about 123.5. That's what I'm watching for. For Meta, finally, Meta made an attempt to bounce and hit my target of about 275, and it rejected off of that, and now it's testing the 50 EMA. I'm anticipating a small bounce on Meta in the morning, followed by a bit of a sell-off as the time goes on, and we're gonna be watching the 50 EMA. If that fails, make sure you watch 269, followed by the mid 260s if that ends up failing. 265 around there if that fails. I'm leaning in the direction that it's going to end up coming down a bit after it gets the bounce. But once again, I'm going to remain open minded. I think there's a high probability of the NASDAQ causing that, but we'll have to just wait and see. So that's what I'm seeing on the charts. For Tesla for tomorrow, I am anticipating choppy price action. There's going to be an attempt to bounce in the morning, followed by it just coming right back down to the 217s. It's going to remain very sideways and choppy as the day goes on. But over time, I see it eventually, because of the QQQ and what I'm seeing and the signs of exhaustion on the RSI and the bearish divergence, I see it eventually coming down to retest 214 to 215 and maybe coming a little bit lower, getting closer to about 210 if we continue to drop like that, and if the QQQ does end up developing those sell reactions. And I think the odds favor that. So that's where I'm leaning for Tesla. Very sideways price action and more downside. But until then, right, it may be kind of boring until we finally get to the big moves. And we'll have to wait and see how that goes for the stock price moving forward. Also, don't forget about the news tomorrow morning. I will release a video anyways. All right, so my bias, especially for the QQQ, is more sideways price action, followed by more downside later on during the week. Could happen as soon as tomorrow, but I would say at least by Friday, I'm going to be watching 350 on the QQQ. I think SPY is going to see a small bounce in the morning, then just trade sideways and eventually come down later on during the week to about 425 or so, or even lower than that if that fails. So that's what I'm seeing on the charts. We have a bearish divergence that developed. It's still playing out. And we're starting to see a lot of them playing out for now. But we need some confirmation, so make sure you watch the major support zones that I mentioned, and if they end up breaking, expect bigger moves. With that said, thank you all for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And don't forget, I have some merch for you guys if you're interested in buying anything like a tank top or a hoodie or something like that. And please remain calm, cool, and collected and very patient. Thank you for listening. Tesla and the market to the moon as the long term is very bright. And peace out.